From Los Angeles, Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth, all while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
With me, Cary Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
Well, on this Rethinking Heroes, we're going to look at the extraordinary new powers officially granted the presidency by the Supreme Court. And what does that mean for you? Then we're going to have open phones to let it all out. Well, President Biden recently declared that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. Well, that solves that. Let's go home. See ya. No. This is in reaction to the Supreme Court decision, but UN whistleblower Craig Wilkyber disagrees. He says the U.S. presidents have always been above the law, with victims spanning the globe. We know what that means. And now the latest Supreme Court decision, Trump versus the United States, aptly named. Think about it. Trump versus the United States. Yeah, that extends this free reign above the American people, as would a king have above his subjects, so long as it's an official act. Oh, well, okay. Coming up, a legal expert who calls this a terrible decision, highlighting the hypocrisy of liberals who are shocked by the expansion of presidential powers. Well, he says successive Democratic administrations have pushed for these powers, including allowing former President Obama to use drone assassinations on U.S. citizens. You'll probably remember that. I talked about that ad nauseum. This was 7 or 8 years ago. It was shocking and appalling that Obama wanted that and got it. But this is different. With us is Professor of International Law at the University of Illinois and author of several books, including Tackling America's Toughest Questions. He's here to discuss the recent Supreme Court decision in the Trump versus United States and its implications for presidential power and the rule of law. Professor Francis Boyle, I want to welcome you to Rethinking Heroes. Aha. Okay. So we are having, he is in Chicago. We are having a difficulty hooking him up. Let's just jump right on into it. And when he joins us, he will join us. So we've got an issue right now where the Supreme Court has ruled that as long as it's an official act, the president may do as he wishes. Well, this is a large problem, particularly during the oral arguments when Justice Kavanaugh, the great beer drinking loving Justice Kavanaugh, pointed out, well, if a president decided to have a coup d'etat as an official act, that would be protected, wouldn't it? Now, where would Justice Kavanaugh, so out of the blue, come up with such a ridiculous idea that has never happened here, never been talked about, and nobody would ever think about it? Because they love our Constitution, and presidents are sworn to uphold the Constitution, which says you can't do that. Therefore, it's not even an oral argument. Yet, it was presented among the first. Well, wouldn't that mean that if a president wanted to have a coup and it was an official act, it would be protected? The answer is yes. The answer is criminality, as long as it was an official act. And remember, official act has not been defined. Now, the Bill of Rights are enumerated. That means they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up into the 20s. And each of them shows where they stop. So the First Amendment stops at a certain point. When it was originally written, it didn't stop until it went to the Supreme Court in the late 1800s. And then again later, like you can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater. Why? Because 700 people stand up and stampede the one door and 80 people die, and it's terrible. So they have kind of come up with common sense exceptions where that wouldn't happen. Crazy thinking it might seem at the time when they made that decision, but these things were actually happening. So they came up with sort of minor limits. we're still allowed to peaceably assemble. Although we remember during the Bush administration, during 9/11 and such, Ashcroft, who was the attorney general at the time, who during an election for him to be running for governor of Missouri, a corpse beat him out in the election. A corpse. So the other governor, the incumbent, died already, and the dead corpse beat out Ashcroft. So horrible, so objectionable and repulsive and repugnant is John Ashcroft, who at Yale, a friend of mine was at Yale when Ashcroft was there, and he said the guy ate alone. He buttoned his shirt right up to his neck. He had no friends, and he was a lunatic and a fundamentalist and just a kind of a weird federalist, just lunatic, not liked, no friends. This man came up with free speech zones because most of the world did not like the idea of a wild invasion into the Middle East, especially where those people like Saddam Hussein in Iraq had done nothing, 0% to contribute to 9/11. But this was all written out in 1997 in PNAC, as it's called, the Project for the New American Century. I know some of you have heard of it. It's online still, and it enumerates and lays out country by country to be invaded and the spoils to be taken. And guess what? 100% of it has now been executed, including Libya, places where we were surprised. What, Libya? Oh, yeah, all of it. PNAC executed. And now with Project 2025 that we now know about, that was on Trump's website, he's trying to distance himself a little bit, the whole cloth dismantling of what they call the administrative state. And that would be all your Social Security, the medicine that your grandmother relies on to stay alive, gone, privatized. She should have a paywall for every single move, from the cat food that she may be able to afford or may not be able to afford. No more food stamps, none of it, 0 paywall for everything. And if you cannot participate, just like the Supreme Court also recently ruled, if you're homeless, you are breaking the law and you shall be arrested. So this is truly the most extraordinary time we've ever lived in. They have been creepy before. They have been wretched before. But this is everything time. This is Machiavellian's manual. This is Adolf Hitler's enabling act. Oh, I can't believe you mentioned him. Well, what is Donald Trump's favorite book in the world? Take a guess, class, hands up. It's Hitler's second book. What do you mean his second book? He only wrote one book, Mein Kampf. Oh, no, he did not. His second book, which you can find on Amazon, rare copies, is called Meine Neue Ordnung, My New Order. And what he did is he took all of his successful speeches, given in beer halls, given in rallies, published them in a book with annotations. Annotations means he wrote in the margins, or more elegantly, it was typed into the book. When you say this 6 times, the crowd does that. Make sure you mention this in order to go there with that speech. Trump memorized that book. How do we know that? His divorce from Ivanka, his first wife, not his divorce from his daughter, who he would have sex with and had admitted. So this is not an incest conversation. This is his first wife. The central core of the divorce was that he was reading Hitler speeches in bed. And where was she from originally? She was from an area that was conquered by the Nazis, who were impolite to those people back then, like killing them. So she could not cotton to some obese swine, lip syncing Hitler speeches in bed, even though she got so much money out of it. That was the line for her. This is what we're talking about. And when our legal expert gets on, if he does, you see him. Still no, but I will hear them. Oh, okay. We may have to call him, or we may just have to move him to another day. The technology sometimes can be complicated for people. Nonetheless, this decision is so heinous. And the fact that Kavanaugh actually went to the extent, and I'm going to read this to you because it's really key. And then let's just open up the phones and let's see what happens here. Pardon me while I bring something up here. So I'm going to read to you what Kavanaugh said, because this is key. This is central for things to come. Okay? Kavanaugh says, and remember, this was a 6-3 decision split along ideological lines. The court remanded the case back to the D.C. District Court for further proceedings to determine which of the charges brought against Trump are official acts, because it's the official acts that no longer count. Why would you not have that in the Constitution? Why did the founding fathers absolutely and specifically not ever allow official acts to be considered immune from prosecution? Because we had just left King George III in England, a tyrant who did kill us, cut off our heads if we disagreed, who starved the colonists that were here, promised help, did not deliver, taxed, variety of things. We all know the history. And it was absolutely clear we would never have a king again who was immune to the public. Remember, the president is your employee, not the other way around. The king is the boss. He has subjects. Subjects are property of the crown. This was to make sure you and I would never become property of the president, which is pretty much what it says now. He is above the law. Above the law. If he does it, whatever it is, as an official act, he can do it. If you, Timmy, you listening to a stream right now, maybe on any streaming platform, you're listening to Rethinking Heroes, you're watching the video, your grandmother might be listening on the radio, your mother might be listening on the radio, but you're listening on a stream. If you had one felony, tell me how easy it is for you to book an airplane ticket and actually physically get on that plane with TSA. You have just one felony. Imagine if you had 34. I mean, how many people do you know? I know I've met people with like 9, mostly DUIs, things like that, 9 felonies. I don't think I've ever met one with 10, 34, and a sex predator. Try getting near a school. Try just going out to the grocery store. Good luck. So the Supreme Court has said official acts, all good. And running for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts described the contours of presidential immunity. So you have to do that. You have to say, what does that mean? Under which the lower courts could operate, finding that a president, quote, may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers as he is entitled at a minimum to a presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts, core duties defined by the president. They're not written down. Oh, here's today's agenda, or this year's, or this 4-year agenda for the president. If he goes off script, well, it's not included. Oh, no. It's an official act because he can declare it official acts. In fact, he could declare anyone, if he were sitting in my chair right now, he could declare anyone listening is an official act. And anything they do for the next 10 minutes would be part of the official act of listening and acting while listening, therefore an official act. So maybe a little coup d'etat, maybe a grope. Now, the majority went so far as to hold that to preserve a president's ability to take bold and unhesitating action. God, I love that. Now we're into the drama here. Bold and unhesitating action, like he's Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator. I'm not going to hesitate. I'm going to go just clobber it. So a president's ability to take bold and unhesitating action while in office, a president's motives cannot be questioned in determining whether an action should be categorized as official, as long as it's bold and unhesitating. In other words, a tantrum. And that evidence of an official act that is relevant to the prosecution of unofficial acts cannot be introduced and considered by a jury. So there, the king has what George III had, sovereign immunity, just like Vladimir Putin with fake elections, or calling them fake, as did the Fuhrer, as has this man, because he has learned from meine neue Ordnung. The end result, as Justice Sotomayor points out in the principal dissent, is to completely insulate presidents from criminal liability. That would include Joe Biden, by the way. He's sitting there. He is president. He could sit down and boldly and unhesitatingly start to do executive orders as official acts, literally change the entire country. Solar cells, coast to coast, reduce pollution levels by this much. Imagine if he did that, sat down and wrote 500 executive orders, including infrastructure, light rail transportation, education that met a certain standard, this, that, the other, executive orders, boldly and unhesitatingly writing those down as official acts. He's not that guy. He's not the SEAL Team 6 guy either, for better or for worse. So he's just going to probably sit around on his soft ass and just play nice. And that is not going to handle a monster in a cage. So there's also another movement, unavoidable to watch on television, which is the idea that he needs to step down for the country. But unfortunately, he's got pride and hubris. It doesn't show the same way as Trump, but I'm going to go to the bitter end. I'm going to keep fighting. I don't want you to think I'm a pussy. Oh, this is scary. This is scary. It's about capability. It's about being compos mentis. Just do the right thing. Retire, go fishing, be with your family. You have put in 40, 50 years of government service. No one's going to look at you as a quitter. Hand the baton off to Kamala. She's got long claws and they are sharp. You've kept her in a cage for 3 years. We never see or hear from her because she is a bit incendiary. Good. Just what we need. Just exactly what we need. And then match her up with someone like Gavin Newsom, who runs the 5th largest economy on earth, and put them against the monster in the cage. Both of them quick, sharp-witted, competent, capable. Imagine 2 Democrats running where the entire country suddenly gets excited. Oh my God, they may not love them, but they would know they have a fighter in the ring. You're not sending grandpa in with a guy, a bare knuckle fighter that punches below the belt. You're sending in 2 people who can fight back and actually are Democrats. In other words, Democrats with a spine, Democrats who stand for something. You're going to get young people who say, I will not vote. It doesn't count. It doesn't matter, because they've been told that over and over and over again. They will find out their vote does matter. They will find out if they show up in sufficient numbers, this can happen. And Trump would not win. And you, what do I care about? You and me not dealing with Project 2025. That's what I care about, because that is the systematic 900-page, like PNAC, written in 1997 by the neocons. And they executed all of that to the letter. Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation would take away everything you know. You would own nothing, have no rights, have no services, and the camps would unfold by 1,000. And we're going to start with the immigrants, whatever that means. And let me tell you, if your last name ends in a vowel, I want you to think closely about it. And if it's not you, it's your mother, it's your cousin, it's your grandmother. And if your grandmother's infirm and cannot, as the Germans put it in World War II, if she leads a burdensome life, and we're taking away Medicare and all these medical services, and she leads a burdensome life, she gets to go away to one of the camps where they will give her premium care, I'm sure, but you won't be able to watch, just like you weren't able to watch the kids that were taken at the border and the girls that were disappeared, as if you weren't able to watch what was going on at Epstein Island either. You don't get to watch. Those cameras are not for your eyes because you don't have the rights anymore. The only one who is the king, and what he says goes. And you can't complain. You may have a First Amendment right, but you'll find how very limited that becomes. Let's go on for a second. Then we're going to pause. I'm going to see if I can get the professor on the line here. We get down to what my favorite part is, Kavanaugh. And Kavanaugh talked about could not, in scoping what an official act is, could not a president throwing a coup be considered an official act. And according to Justice Kavanaugh, yes, a coup d'etat is an official act if the president orders it. And there's Vladimir Putin in a nutshell, and there's Kavanaugh as a nutshell, and there is the current sitting Supreme Court in a nutshell. It's shocking and appalling. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. We're going to pause for a second. When we return, hopefully, we have Professor Francis Boyle. If not, we have you. We're going to open up the phones at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, and let it all hang out. We'll find out in about 2 minutes.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. rethinkingheroes.com.
Hi there, my name is Cary, and I own a penthouse, but not for long. I'm going to be traveling all over the world, and unfortunately, I have to let it go. But I'm in love with it. I want you to meet my realtor, a rock star, if there ever was one. This is Cara Toma.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here and meet all of you.
It's an honor to share with you an incredible penthouse in the iconic Bayshore Royale condominium. It's situated at Tampa Bay's most sought-after location, Bayshore Boulevard and Howard Avenue. This 1775 square foot masterpiece offers superior space, featuring its own private entrance, and it has 2 equally fabulous bedrooms and 2 luxurious baths. Prepare to be captivated by the 180 degrees of unobstructed views of the beautiful Bayshore Boulevard. So, you ask, how much would you pay for this $1 million view? Isn't it stunning? Well, I can tell you, next door starts at $1.7 million, and they don't come close to having this view. It would cost upwards of $4 million to have this vista. Do I have your attention? Are you ready for the price? This is marked at only $699, and all of this can be yours. The private entry, exquisite views, an open concept with 2 primary suites, the chef's kitchen, and a maintenance-free living, Tampa's hottest nightlife and best restaurants within walking distance. You now have the opportunity to reside at the elite address of Bayshore Boulevard. And an opportunity like this does not last long. So give me a call to schedule your showing today, and I will be more than happy to take you around the beautiful property, which also includes the pool and a glorious outdoor entertainment area. So how about having this $1 million view and not paying the $1 million price? Give me a call today. My number is 813-362-3270.
I hope you'll call Cara and see what we can do together.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Give me a call. I'd love to show you around, give you the full tour. You can reach me at 813-362-3270. And we welcome you. You will love it here. The neighbors that I've met just by selling this place they're incredible. It really is a great community.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. rethinkingheroes.com.
All right, and it is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com, live streaming on everything with a chip and a signal. You can go to rethinkingheroes.com. We are going to have Professor Francis Boyle on by what's called the telephone. You probably remember these things. They were historical instruments going on for the past few hundred years. Many of us have mobile devices, but we're actually going to connect him through a landline. Often video can be challenging or sometimes impossible, depending on where you live and how it works. So Renee is going to let me know in a second, you guys, when he's on. I'm just going to reset. We're talking right now about the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that says the President of the United States has extraordinary new powers officially granted by the Supreme Court, and what that does mean for you and me. Whistleblower Craig McIver disagrees, saying the U.S. presidents have always been above the law, with victims spanning the globe. We can look at Israel right now, and depending how you want to view it, you could say maybe some people are getting hurt. And now the latest Supreme Court decision, Trump versus United States, aptly named, extends this free reign above the American people, as would a king have above his subjects, so long as it is an official act. How do you like that? I can do whatever I want as long as it's official. Unofficially, I can't. But, the way I eat scrambled eggs in the White House for breakfast, it depends on my mood. If I want to eat scrambled eggs and stab the chef as an official act of my officially eating breakfast, his official White House eggs that I did not like, I said over easy and they were a little overcooked, and I stabbed the chef, that would be an official act, as long as you declare it so. And you could make an official act that after the fact, you could declare something before was an official act. So to bring some light on it, let's bring on Professor Francis Boyle. He is a professor of international law at the University of Illinois, author of several books, including Tackling America's Toughest Questions, here to discuss the recent Supreme Court decision in Trump versus the United States and its implications for presidential power and the rule of law. Rule as in the way a king might rule, or maybe just the rules of law if there are any left. Professor Francis Boyle, welcome to Rethinking Heroes.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, Cary. My best to your listening audience.
And we're glad to have you aboard to bring clarity out of the murkiness of it all. Maybe you could start by giving us your reaction to the Supreme Court's decision in Trump versus United States, an appalling name. Just makes me wince hearing that. Help some of our listeners understand, what does this really mean?
Well, I think your opening monologue really summed it up appropriately. We have to understand what happened here. On January 6th, Trump and his followers launched a coup d'etat against the United States Constitution and our Republican system of government. This was very similar to Hitler's Munich beer hall putsch of 1923, and yet 10 years later, he constitutionally became the chancellor of Germany. So right now, in my assessment of the situation, we're in a Weimar Republic type of situation. Only Justice Sotomayor pointed that out in her dissent, joined by Kagan and Jackson, what really happened here. And effectively, they've immunized, insulated Trump from any criminal consequences at all for what he and his followers did.
We're talking to Professor Francis Boyle. Maybe you could tell us to what degree could someone like a Donald Trump take advantage of the Supreme Court decision? Kavanaugh, in the oral arguments, pointed out that a president could even have a coup d'etat as an official act. Clearly, an out-of-the-blue, made-up impossibility in the mind of Kavanaugh.
Well, he already launched a coup d'etat, Cary, and basically now the U.S. Supreme Court has given him de jure immunity for the coup d'etat he already launched. That's really what happened here. So at the end of the day, after all the nitpicking legal proceedings and up and down, I don't think that he'll get off scot-free. And if he's reelected, who knows what he's going to do? I mean, you just see all the statements he's made, and he'll have the power to carry out these statements, and there will be no consequences at all. Indeed, just to go through, I'm not going to go through all the opinions here, but Robert's statement that Trump's comments or his dealings there with lawyers at the Department of Justice are absolutely immune. It's completely preposterous. He in his conversations over the Department of Justice was planning and plotting the coup d'etat. Clearly, at a minimum, this was criminal activity, conspiracy to defraud the United States government in violation of a federal criminal statute. And Roberts just said, well, he's immune for that. And then presumptive immunity, well, it looks for just about everything else. As for unofficial acts, they provided no criteria at all for unofficial versus official. So that Trump would be, and any president, not just Trump, will be completely unrestrained. This goes back to the Federalist Society, which we've discussed before, Cary. This right-wing, racist, bigoted, reactionary, homophobic, totalitarian, sexist, anti-labor, anti-union operation there. That starting with Reagan for 8 years, and then Bush Sr. for 4 years, Bush Jr. for 8 years, and then Trump for 4 years, these Republican presidents have packed all federal courts up and down with these Federalist Society apparatchiks, including the United States Supreme Court, where we now have 6 of them on there, including Roberts, who is behind me at Harvard Law School. And by the way, Roberts perjured himself to get on the U.S. Supreme Court. He denied that he was a member of the Federalist Society when we have absolute evidence in writing that, in fact, he was a member of the Federalist Society. So we have a perjurer as a Chief Justice doing all this. So, Cary, all this was predictable if you followed the agenda of the Federalist Society and the plan to pack the Supreme Court with these apparatchiks.
Let's talk for a second.
Correct.
Let's talk for a second about counterpacking the Supreme Court, and can it be achieved?
Right. Well, I've argued this for quite some time, that since the Republican presidents going back to Reagan have deliberately and maliciously packed the Supreme Court with Federalist Society justices to get this situation we're in today, 6 of them, I've argued we should counterpack, and that should be an agenda by and I'm a political independent, but here I think that needs to be an agenda by the Democratic Party and whoever the presidential candidate is, following in the footsteps of President Roosevelt, that in the event the Democrats can resume control of Congress, to just put 6 justices on there to counteract the 6 Federalist Society justices we already have. I think you have to fight fire with fire. Some liberals, progressives have criticized me, saying, "Oh, well, we should just talk about unpacking." I said, "Well, no, we're not unpacking anything. These Republican presidents have packed the Federalist Society judges on the U.S. Supreme Court back to Reagan. It's been deliberate on purpose, and so we have to call a spade a spade. And let's just say we are going to counterpack the U.S. Supreme Court with 6 justices against these Federalist Society justices." That's the way we are now.
Ooh, I'm liking the sound of that. We're talking right now to Dr. Francis Boyle, professor of international law at the University of Illinois, author of several books, including Tackling America's Toughest Questions. We're discussing the recent Supreme Court decision in Trump versus the United States and its implications for presidential power and the rule of law. Professor Boyle, what do you think is the most important step we might take to ensure that the president is not above the law?
Wow. after that decision, I'm trying to figure that out myself, Cary. I think at this point we need to engage in civil resistance by the American people to be exercising our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, out there in the streets of America. To make it clear, we oppose this now. Unfortunately, Biden isn't going to lead this struggle at all. As a matter of fact, he was on the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He helped put all these people on there, including Clarence Thomas. But I think we, the people, are going to have to take this in our hands. I know when the Reagan administration was threatening to invade Nicaragua, we set up the Pledge of Resistance. We had 100,000 people taking a pledge that if and when Reagan invaded Nicaragua, we would all take to the streets and engage in peaceful, nonviolent civil resistance. I was counsel to the Pledge of Resistance at that time. I'm afraid that's all we have now is our right of civil resistance. If you're interested, I've written a book on this, Protesting Power, War, Resistance, and Law. It's been endorsed by Noam Chomsky, Howard Zinn, Ramsey Clark. You can just get it on Amazon in a paperback version outlining the theory of civil resistance and what we're going to have to do to stop this.
Let's pivot quickly here as we finish up, as we talk to Professor Francis Boyle. The State Department whistleblower, Josh Paul, others have argued that the Biden administration is in violation of several U.S. laws by continuing to arm Israel, including the Foreign Assistance Act, the Arms Export Control Act, the Genocide Convention Implementation Act, and the Leahy Law, which prohibits funding militaries engaging in gross human rights abuses. Would the recent Supreme Court decision make legal these sorts of actions by President Biden suddenly?
That's exactly right. As I said, this is a threat to all of us from any president. For example, as you know out there in Cary, my friends at the Mark Vanderhoot and the Center for Constitutional Rights have a lawsuit currently pending in the Ninth Circuit arguing that Biden, Blinken, and Austin have violated the Genocide Convention, which they clearly have done, complicity in genocide, Article 3E, and the Genocide Convention Implementation Act, which, is a felony. And yet, according to the decision by Roberts, Biden now has absolute immunity to go ahead and aid and abet Israeli genocide against the Palestinians. Likewise, the hypothetical that Sotomayor put out about Trump, someone ordering the Navy SEALs to kill someone. Well, Obama already did that in his order to assassinate and murder United States citizens in violation of the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution.
That was using drones, if I remember.
Obama about that at all. He's even worse than Bush Jr. was. Even Bush Jr. and Ashcroft, who you properly condemned, they did not arrogate to themselves any right to murder U.S. citizens. And this has already happened. So why wouldn't, Biden or any other Democrat do the exact same thing when they have the Obama precedent? As you know, Obama said, gee, I'm really good at killing people. And this is a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard Law School who's behind me there at Harvard Law School. So we really are up the proverbial creek here without a paddle. And that is why I think the one thing we do have is our rights under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, freedom of speech, freedom of press. That's why the Assange case was so important here. freedom of association, the right to petition our government for redress of grievances. It looks to me that's what we're left with, because the deck is stacked against the American people at the U.S. Supreme Court by these 6 Federalist Society justices. And by the way, Kagan is a fellow traveler of the Federalist Society. While she was dean at Harvard Law School and then Solicitor General, she licked their boots of the Federalist Society in order to advance herself and eventually get nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court. And her infamous quote on National Public Radio, quote, "I love the Federalist Society," unquote. So, and, we really can't trust her at the end of the day. Basically, I think there are only 2 justices I would trust, Sotomayor and Jackson. So we're in a dire situation. The Supreme Court is not going to pull our chestnuts out of the fire. We, the American people, as the Constitution says, we're going to have to do it ourselves.
Well, I appreciate this very much. Thank you for talking to us today. I have to jump to the phones in a moment. We've been talking to Dr. Francis Boyle, professor of international law at the University of Illinois and author of several books, including Tackling America's Toughest Questions. We're discussing the recent Supreme Court decision in Trump versus United States, its implications for presidential power, the rule of law, the idea of also counterpacking the Supreme Court and adding 6 more justices so that there's actually some kind of fair and reasonable balance. All of this is possible as we think more about it, as we learn more about it, and we'll have you, Professor Boyle, back on, and we'll break down those parts because we do have an audience that actually does like to get into action, and you'll give them a reason to live. So I appreciate your coming on today, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me on, and my congratulations, I think, to your excellent monologue at the beginning of the program. We really need to think quite seriously of all the points you raised.
Thank you very much, my friend. Looking forward to having you back. That's Professor Francis Boyle. You can look him up on Amazon or anywhere else. He's written prolific books. He's also the author of the Bioweapons Convention, Anti-Bioweapons Convention, which was signed into law, ratified by Congress, and of course, signed by Bush the First, which makes it illegal in the United States to create bioweapons. And therefore, we create lots because it's illegal. Another discussion for another time. We're going to open up the phones. I'm going to pause for a second. When we come back, we're going to jump to Larry from San Pedro. Looks like we've got 2 or 3 people queued up at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. I want you to tell me what you see when a president has sovereign immunity, something the founding fathers absolutely and on purpose did not put in the Constitution, because the last thing we wanted when we left a king was to have another. And people wanted George Washington to be king. They really did. He was a good guy. Do you know what he did? He resigned his commission. He said, "We shall have no kings here. We shall have no lords, no dukes, no knights, no titles." And we still don't have that today, but we have a new ruling that as long as it's an official act, the wrong guy, really a rancid president, could destroy everything we know and has a plan to. If one of them gets in, it's called Project 2025. How does this affect you? What is your reaction on it? 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. This is Rethinking Heroes.
We are in complete control.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
Hi there, my name is Cary and I own a penthouse, but not for long. I'm going to be traveling all over the world and unfortunately I have to let it go, but I'm in love with it. I want you to meet my realtor, a rock star if there ever was one. This is Cara Toma.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here and meet all of you.
It's an honor to share with you an incredible penthouse in the iconic Bayshore Royale condominium. It's situated at Tampa Bay's most sought-after location, Bayshore Boulevard and Howard Avenue. This 1775 square foot masterpiece offers superior space, featuring its own private entrance, and it has 2 equally fabulous bedrooms and 2 luxurious baths. Prepare to be captivated by the 180 degrees of unobstructed views of the beautiful Bayshore Boulevard. So, you ask, how much would you pay for this $1 million view? Isn't it stunning? Well, I can tell you, next door starts at $1.7 million, and they don't come close to having this view. It would cost upwards of $4 million to have this vista. Do I have your attention? Are you ready for the price? This is marked at only $699, and all of this can be yours. The private entry, exquisite views, an open concept with 2 primary suites, the chef's kitchen, and a maintenance-free living, Tampa's hottest nightlife and best restaurants within walking distance. You now have the opportunity to reside at the elite address of Bayshore Boulevard. And an opportunity like this does not last long. So give me a call to schedule your showing today, and I will be more than happy to take you around the beautiful property, which also includes the pool and glorious outdoor entertainment area. So how about having this $1 million view and not paying the $1 million price? Give me a call today. My number is 813-362-3270.
I hope you'll call Cara and see what we can do together.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Give me a call. I'd love to show you around, give you the full tour. You can reach me at 813-362-3270. And we welcome you. You will love it here. The neighbors that I've met just by selling this place they're incredible. It really is a great community.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, RethinkingHeroes.com. Cary Harrison with you. If you go to RethinkingHeroes.com, you can see live streaming video on pretty much every single platform. Plus, on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, we do the Cary Harrison Files, which is the unexpurgated, unrated version of topics where we can really do deep digs and take some wild and woolly angles on stuff without FCC worries and little kitties and all the rest of it, but really and raw, unvarnished opinions. So you can go to rethinkingheroes.com or just go to my YouTube channel at Cary Harrison, boom, boom, Cary, and catch us there. Just a little afterglow for you so that you know that we're around and ubiquitous, whatever that means. We're going to take your calls now at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, talking about the Supreme Court opinion, which has granted king-like powers to the sitting king, not the best. The next one would be the death knell. Let's go to Larry in San Pedro. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hey, good morning, Cary. Thanks for taking my call.
Good morning, my friend.
Biden is not going to move unless we pressure him. I have emailed him twice. You have my promise. I will call the White House. And what I would like to see happen is, I think Biden should take this new ruling by the High Court and take it out for a test run, and he should charge, arrest, and jail all of the coup conspirators, all starting with the one at Mar-a-Lago, the ones in the Congress, the ones on the Supreme Court. So that's where I think we should pressure Mr. Biden. And if you're amenable, Cary, I will hang up and take my answer off the air. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Larry. Thank you so much. And that was a bit of my thinking earlier, is that Biden should just begin executive orders, start doing, solar cells, windmill farms, just build them, executive orders, just make it happen to the point where the Supreme Court's so horrified by all the beauty and the education that's suddenly blossoming and the clean water that's suddenly flowing out of taps that they reverse this terrible decision. Because clearly the idea of a president having immunity to do good things is unconscionable to these kinds of people. Make it so beautiful that it's ugly to them and they reverse it. Unfortunately, I don't think it would work that way. And Biden is, well, Sleepy Joe. I mean, I hate to say, but it doesn't seem to be wildly inaccurate. And right now we've got 3 months to get into action. 3 months to get into action. Take someone like Kamala Harris, the vice president, the invisible vice president, purposely kept invisible. Unleash her. You probably saw her on CNN after the so-called debate. And Anderson Cooper ripped into her. I mean, he had his fangs out. And I'm thinking, why is he treating her like this? He barely talks to her ever. She's barely on national television, and he is ripping her apart. And I was thinking, he must think that the next president is going to be Trump, and he's rebuilding his brand to fit so that he's liked and allowed to continue. That's the only thing I could think of for somebody being self-serving like that. Let's go to Sandra. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you great.
Okay. The first thing, it seems to me, is to make sure that Mr. Trump does not win the election, and it doesn't matter who the Democratic candidate is at this point, because the Democrats don't have a Project 25. And although one may not like everything that they do, they're not out to destroy the country. I'm old enough to have voted in the Reagan election, and that changed everything. And I knew people who wouldn't vote for Carter because he didn't do this or he didn't do that, and Reagan started this whole thing. And the same thing with George Bush. People didn't think Gore was good enough. So I think the most important thing at this moment is to make sure that any Republican, especially Trump, because he really is he's not the head necessarily, but he is the symbol of this Project 25, and to make sure that he's not elected.
Great call. Thank you so much, Sandra. Very much appreciate it. That opens up a line at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let's jump to Richard in Eagle Rock. Richard, you're on Rethinking Heroes.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The thing is that if we do, as your guest said, and I say it's possible, and we have to do it, because it's perfect timing. Biden's on the ropes and Trump is going to prison. So what we do is we get rid of the six. We, the people, go beyond Congress and get rid of the six on the Supreme Court. And then we have a starting point. We are able to begin this whole nation anew, just like Tom Paine said. We have the power to begin the world again. And they did. Voting all over the world today came out of our revolution. But look at the mess that it's in. We need to become a unified group who is voting for our country, for our Constitution, not for some party. Now, Tom Hartman said, a movement is not a political party. We are right now in the middle of a giant movement, and we can make this thing happen long before the election. We have that power. We have that right. We've never exercised it. We can do it now.
Well, amen to that. I appreciate your call, my friend. It is true. We also have to remember that the sitting president, Joe Biden, is the head of the Democratic Party. So he's not just some dude that's part of it and they make the decisions. He's the boss. It's like a union. He's the boss. So if he decides he stays because Jill, his wife, is acting like Howard Dean, and it's just, she's his biggest fan, and by God, he can do it to the bitter end. He's going to hang in there. We're toast. I realize it may not sound popular to everyone, but you've got Kamala. She is the vice president. You can't pretend she's not there. Give her the chance. Break a glass ceiling also. Imagine a woman, not only a woman of color. Then maybe throw in Buttigieg. He was killer. What a brilliant guy. He and Bernie, remember? They were leading by 90%. And the next day we were told, who had about 16%, I believe, oh, it's Joe Biden. And we went, what? They declared, because they can, it was Joe Biden. And so it was. And we saw what people like Buttigieg could do. We have our own governor, Gavin Newsom, who is no slouch and runs the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. Put those two together, you're going to have young people inspired coast to coast and counterpack the court. You can't fire the Supreme Court justices, but you can add to them. And that's what Professor Boyle, of international law professor, is pointing out. And he went to Harvard with every one of these gutter snipes and puck fists, which is kind of remarkable, and probably knew them too. We can squeeze in. Let's go to Lily in Long Beach. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hi, hello.
Hello there.
Hi. So I just wanted to comment on the whole Project 2025. I'm hearing like a lot of controversy over, we need to do something to stop it, or we need to join forces now. But if you're really paying attention to everything that's going on, Project 2025 is already here. We're witnessing the first few phases of Project 2025 from just the Supreme Court rulings right now with ex-President Donald Trump, with the whole Chevron case being overruled, Roe v. Wade overturned under a Democratic, president. Homelessness is now going to be criminalized in certain cities, different parts of the world. So, Project 2025 is already here. So as far as us trying to prevent it from happening, I feel like we could do stuff to prevent it, but as far as us saying like we need to do something to stop it before it starts, that's where we're failing to see the signs that it is already here. Look at all the cop cities that are being built around our country.
You're right. You're right, Jody. I'm just going to jump in because we're running out of time. I'm just going to jump in, and I want to thank you for your call. It is here. Think of it as the hors d'oeuvre. Think of it as the unofficial hors d'oeuvre. You're getting a glimpse of the joy that is Project 2025. These things that are so offensive and repulsive to all of us that you pointed out very clearly just now. These are just the hors d'oeuvres. This is the deviled egg. This is the little bacon rolled up in cheese. Then you have 600 waiters coming in with giant silver platters, which dismantle entire arms of the government. We saw Donald Trump do this during his presidency, didn't we? Dismantling giant government institutions and relocating people physically to places like Oklahoma, which had nothing to do with the work that they were supposed to do. And none of them would relocate because guess what? They had families in Washington. Their kids were in schools there, and they had 8 minutes to unpeg their tents. So it was a great recipe for complete disaster. 900 pages of living hell. And it will only happen if we don't get up, especially get young people and all women to vote, because this is it. Women will unexist. The 19th Amendment, you can kiss that goodbye too, because why would you want 50% of America being able to vote the wrong way? So you're going to remove 50% of America, and those are going to be women. Let's thank Renee Yawarski, our series producer. Let's thank Gary Baca in the studio at KPFK. And let's thank you, the listener, without whom none of this happens. And without you, we don't redistribute thinking. We don't get to have these open and free conversations. So I am endlessly and perpetually grateful. Cary Harrison with you. I hope you'll join me on rethinkingheroes.com. I hope you'll join us on Monday nights at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific for the Cary Harrison File, the unexpurgated version of all of this. And I will see you next Friday And I will see you always and in perpetuity and in the free and open place that you call your mind.
We are in complete